Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scarlett, and I am discussing with you the l'inconnu de la Seine, the beauty in tragedy. Do you recognize this face? Like me, you may find her eerily familiar, or perhaps you see no familiarity in her at all, but you have all probably seen her before in your lifetime. Her face becoming the Resusci Annie. It's a doll used to teach CPR and ultimately save people's lives. And because of this, has become known as the most kissed face in history. Romantic, right? The l'inconnu de la Seine, which translates into the unknown woman of the Seine, is the face of a woman whose body was found in the Seine River in northern France in 1870 to 1880. Little is known about this woman, nor the creation of this piece, being one of the first Jane Does ever on record. Many have tried, but nobody has been able to identify her, nor the moments leading up to her death. No family was ever found, yet many still mourned. As the story is told, a pathologist found her face enticing, enchanted by the look of content she held in her final moments just before death. He decided to encapsulate this moment in history, creating a death mask of her face. Death masks are the live casting of a corpse, taking an impression of a face, which can then be used to manufacture sculptures and wall pieces. They're typically made of papyrus, wax, or linen, covered in plaster and then molded around a wooden plate. However, for royalty throughout Egypt and Europe, they have been seen to have been created out of precious metals, such as golden leaf. During the Victorian era, they were typically made for one of two reasons. Firstly, as a memorial for a wealthy or prominent aristocrat or monarch, or secondly, as a means of identification, specifically regarding criminals. Possibly most famously, Mary, Queen of Scots, where after her beheading, Queen Elizabeth was presented with this death mask of her face to ensure the correct person was executed. However, the l'inconnu de la Seine is a rather peculiar example of a death mask. It was not made as a means of identification, nor as a memorial to this young woman's life, but out of aesthetic and in the name of art. Later, many copies of this piece had been created in the 1900s. It became a rather popular wall fixture throughout Europe, many finding solace in the innocent and happy look she held just before she died, giving hope to people that there is something better after life. There are countless myths about how her demise came to be, with some suggesting murder, others suggesting a terrible, tragic, fatal accident, but most suggesting suicide. The most notable story claims that she fell in love, but after she experienced heartbreak so crushing, she threw herself into the river below. This left the whole of Europe wondering, who is she and what really happened to her? And this may leave you wondering, why? How can the death of a young woman who so tragically took her own life become a decoration in somebody's home? Can something as dark as suicide ever truly become aesthetically pleasing? And how moral is it to take somebody's face without their consent, mass producing it and capitalizing off of their so-called tragedy? This face becomes so influential throughout the Victorian era. Young women seek to imitate her appearance, growing thinner and paler as though dead. So why is the death of young women so appealing? To answer this, we must look into the romanticization of female sadness and history's fixation on our suicide. The Greek philosopher Aristotle describes happiness as requiring balance and symmetry. He describes that if you don't experience sadness in your life, you can never truly experience happiness. David C. Drake frequently wrote about Aristotle's philosophies, and he famously quotes, "A connection between sadness and beauty may have a sound philosophical foundation." The idea of this dead girl beauty became somewhat of an obsession in the Victorian era, and even possibly the standard to which women were held to. Sound familiar to anyone? Well, even in our schools to this day, Shakespeare's plays are being taught, and this sad girl trope is almost inevitable. We may all be thinking of Romeo and Juliet, where after the loss of the love of her life, "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath," and she takes her life with a dagger. And death by drowning was already a popular art concept before the La Quenouille de la Seine, possibly most famously Ophelia by Sir John Everett Marles. This depicts a very young woman singing in a river in Denmark before she inevitably drowns. This painting was completed in early 1850s, 1852 to 1853, give or take. This is just before the La Quenouille de la Seine ever came to be. Perhaps the pathologist found inspiration from this piece. He viewed this young girl as the real-life Ophelia, both beautiful women facing the same demise. But is this piece even art? What can we consider art? An imprint of somebody's face? Something that was never even intended to be art? The medium of a death mask? And I'll leave you with this question. How comfortable would you feel in the presence of a corpse? Edgar Allan Poe himself even famously wrote that beauty, the death of a beautiful woman, is unquestionably the most poetic topic in the world. It seems as though the death of a woman is far more admirable than her life. Her thoughts, feelings, experiences, it all equates to nothing, where eventually she is just that beautiful dead girl. And perhaps that was what was so enticing about the La Quenouille de la Seine. She's this physical embodiment of that poetic death. A beautiful girl fell in love and took her own life. The creator of this piece was not an artist, and he likely never even intended to be so. He was just a man who found joy in this young woman's face. I can consider this art, as nature is cruel. You pass and you slowly disappear, until all you are is just a memory, a thought throughout somebody's day, and memory is fickle. Your face will never be remembered the same, your voice eventually forgotten. Even those who surrounded you every day will forget what you looked like. Even with pictures, they will never be able to hold your face again, touch your skin again. What makes this art is that it is a moment in time, a life that can never truly die and alive in many households. That is what makes this beautiful. What is not beautiful, however, is how the female tragedy is romanticized and depicted in this way. The death of a young woman is not an aesthetic. It is the loss of a life which could have been full, successful, and great. Women are not just their pretty face. It saddens me to see how this young woman's life was twisted into this dark fairy tale. A heartbroken woman takes her own life because somebody left her, as though she's nothing without her male counterpart. And it has always been the same story ever since we were children. A woman stuck in a tower, awaiting a handsome prince to save the day. Snow White lying lifeless on the floor, awaiting Prince Charming's kiss of life, just like the Resusci Annie is. How moral is it to narrow down this woman's life into a tale so generic and so simple? And why assume she must have been so sad and miserable? Perhaps she was adventurous. She wished to take a swim in the river despite the inevitable danger she knew she was putting herself in. or her life taken in the hands of somebody else? We will never truly know. We know nothing about this woman, yet we believe we can know so much just from her face, as though her appearance the defining feature of her identity. Her identity is unknown to us. However, we molded it into what we believe it should be, just like her mask was: beautiful, innocent, and dead. Now, you're all probably thinking, Scarlett, nobody really wants women to die. They're just taking a heartbreaking situation and turning it into something far more palatable to us. Well, in the famous book, Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, Sybil's suicide is discussed, where one character tells her late partner that he should be grateful she loved him enough to kill herself for him, as though admirable or something to be expected of a woman. So the next time you look into the eyes of the Risasi Annie doll, you peer into the soul of the most kissed face in history, remember that this woman had a life. Not a tale, not a myth, nor a story to tell yourself before you tuck yourself in bed, but a real full life which is unknown to us. We stole it, transformed it, and twisted it. We left a mold, a template, a mask that women feel they need to wear. A face void of any true meaning, but full of mystery. Thank you.